بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
In our series on Umdatul Ahkam, we're still studying the chapters that deal with the prescribed punishments. So we went through the killing, what to do, and then we went through the punishment on fornication. Now we have another hadith that deals with something that is prescribed, but it is not quite known to a lot of us. And this is hadith number 351. And who will read that? Yes.
Narrated by Abu Huraira radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if someone is peeping into your house secretly without your permission and you threw a stone at him and poked his eye, there is no blame on you.
So this is a prescribed punishment. What is the prescribed punishment? There is no warning. The Prophet ﷺ is telling us that there is no warning. This is not trying to prevent an assailant from his crime. You remember a few lessons ago, we talked about if someone wants to attack your house. The minute he climbs on the fence, you don't shoot him between the eyes. You warn him. If he comes, you shoot in the air and tell him, I'm going to shoot you. If he still comes, you shoot him in the leg. So you try your level best to reduce the harm as much as possible. In here, the Prophet did not ﷺ say anything of such, which means that this is not preventing an assailant from attacking. This is a punishment. Anyone peeping into your house trying to see what's inside, his punishment, if you have a stick, put it in his eyes or stone him or do something that does not kill him. But poking his eyes is a legitimate punishment done by the Prophet ﷺ. And this shows us how sacred houses are. And that is why in Islam there is what is known as al-isti'dhan. Isti'dhan means to seek permission. And you seek permission before entering a room or a house 3 times by saying Assalamu alaikum and wait for an answer. Alaikum assalam, come in. Or you say Assalamu alaikum, adkhul, shall I come in? 3 times. If no one answers you, you leave. And the Prophet was asked alayhi salatu wasalam also, do I seek permission when I want to enter my mother's room who is extremely old? What did the Prophet say alayhi salam? He said, do you like to see your mother naked? I said, no. And then he said, you have to seek permission because the permission is sought after for the reason of looking. And why do I say, can I come in? So that you do not see something that I don't want you to look at. And that is why this great punishment is equivalent to the great sin of someone spying and snooping and trying to look from the curtains or from the holes of the house so that he could see something. And this is an illness, this is a disease. It's quite common in quote-unquote civilized world, where you find people with cameras or with binoculars looking at people's houses and spending 6-7 hours. What are you waiting for? I just may see something that people don't want me to see. And likewise, spying, when you put, nowadays with technology, you put cameras that are so small, so tiny, in living rooms and bedrooms, and you record things and you snoop around in people's life. This is all major sins, not minor, major sins that allows a person to harm that person by poking his eye. And there is nothing wrong, no diya, no blood money. If you do this to someone who peeps into your house, there is no diya, there's no compensation. You have not done anything wrong. This, of course, is according to the Islamic law. Now, can you do this in a place that does not apply Islamic law? Unfortunately not. They will put you in jail and maybe give you life and accuse you of being a terrorist. Because there, they don't have anything as nudity or haram or aib or things to be concealed. Everything is open. It's okay. If you don't see it in the house, you'd see it on the internet. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us from all of this. Now, moving on to hadith 352, we now study the hadiths related to the prescribed punishment for stealing. So, hadith 352.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Narrated Ibn Umar, the Prophet ﷺ cut off the hand of a thief for stealing a shield that was worth 3 dirhams.
Okay, this hadith is telling us about a case that took place at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. A man stole a shield that was worth 3 dirham. The following hadith, hadith number 353, who will read that for us? Okay.
Narrated Aisha radiallahu anha, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the hand should be cut off for stealing a quarter of a dinar or more.
So now it is quarter of a dinar. And in the previous hadith, the price or the cost of the shield was 3 dirham. And scholars say that 3 dirhams are equivalent to a quarter of a dinar, because a dinar is equivalent to 12 dirhams. And this is what they call nisab. What is the nisab? It is the minimal amount or limit. We use the word nisab in zakat, for example. So the minimal amount of zakat in gold, the nisab is 85 grams. If you have 80 grams, this is below the nisab, which means that you do not qualify for zakat. In stealing, there are a number of conditions to be applied. And one of them is nisab. So if someone steals something that is below that, is there any prescribed punishment? Is there any had? The answer is no. If someone steals a loaf of bread, which is nothing, so do we cut his hand off? The answer is no. So there is what is known as nisab for stealing. And there are conditions that must be fulfilled so that we can apply this prescribed punishment. And among the condition is that there should not be any ambiguity. So if a man steals from his wife's possession, believing that this is his, or a boy or a man steals from his father, or the father steals from his son, or a man steals from the wallet that was used for poor and he's poor, so he takes from it. An amount of money is allocated for charity and for the poor, and a poor man comes and steals from it. We don't chop his hand because he has right in that money, and so on. Among the conditions of stealing is that it has to be in secrecy. So if there is money found and someone in broad daylight, while everybody is looking, he takes it and leaves, there is no cutting of the hand. If someone does not steal but embezzles, he works in a company and every now and then he transfers money to his bank account, a little bit, this is not stealing, because he did not do this as the conditions are supposed to be done in secret, and it should be from a safe or from a place that it is kept. So if someone has money but he has it in his backyard and someone comes and takes it, this is not stealing. If someone is walking and dropped his wallet, I came and took his wallet and left, this is not stealing. Not that it is halal, meaning that it is not stealing that I can demand cutting the hand. And it has to be in a place where it is kept and preserved in that suits it. So for example, where do we usually safeguard sheep? In a barn, in a fenced barn. So if someone has a sheep in his house and someone steals it, this is not a proper place to keep a sheep, or has it in the back of his car and someone opens the door, and this is not stealing. Where do we keep gold and silver? We keep it usually in a safe. If someone has it in the refrigerator and a thief comes in and finds it and takes it from the refrigerator, it's not a suitable thing to do. Likewise, if someone who is powerful and with authority goes and takes a piece of land, this is not considered to be stealing, because stealing has to be in the middle of the night. It has to be trying to go to places that people are not aware of. It has to be in secret. So all of these conditions, which are very hard to implement, only can result, if fulfilled, in the amputation of a man's hand. And the first time a person steals, as mentioned in the Quran, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, If a man or a woman steal, their punishment is to amputate their hand. What is the meant by hand? The whole arm, from the shoulder, from the elbow? No. Hand is this place, to the wrist. And that is why in the ayah of al-wudu, of ablution, wash your faces and hands till the elbows. So now we know that this is not enough. You have to wash the hand till the elbow. And if he steals another time, after cutting his right hand, we chop off his left foot. If he steals for the third time, we chop off his left hand. And if he steals for the fourth time, we chop off his other foot. So now he has no feet and no hands. If he steals for the fifth time, this is for the judge to decide whether to flog him, to jail him. But someone who is in such case, he is definitely bad news. So may Allah Azza wa Jal protect us all from such things. Moving on to hadith number 354. It deals with stealing as well, but in a different point of view. We will take this hadith after the break, so stay tuned.
The more you hear about it, the more you desire to prepare for it. Life after death. Journey of the soul. The day of resurrection. The torment of the hellfire. The reward of paradise. Stay tuned for a life-changing, heart-softening, spiritually uplifting series about the hereafter exclusively on Peace TV.
Know the vivid descriptions of paradise and hellfire from the Quran and authentic ahadith, and acquire life-changing habits to be successful in the hereafter. Every Tuesday at 11:30 p.m. and repeat telecast at 12:30 p.m. Saudi Arabia on Peace TV. Peace TV presents over 100 million viewers at one of the largest peace conferences in the world, addressing a sea of spellbound spectators. Over 30 world-renowned orators on Islam with credentials impeccable.
The truth of Islam.
Deen is your way of life.
It is our duty, our obligation.
By following the Quran and Sunnah,
we will give the message to one and all.
With articulation exquisite.
Read the book of Allah.
Islam is the easy way. It's the simple way.
Remind each other.
The Muslim is not a source of harm for other people.
Collaborate with the people for good.
This is the call of Islam.
With the mission of spreading the truth of Islam.
Do what you can to spread the word of Islam. Wherever we are.
Live like Muslims.
Use your power.
Allah is saying, why do you need anything else? This Quran is self-sufficient.
The only book on the face of the globe, the Quran.
How a human being should lead his life is given in this instruction manual, the glorious Quran.
For peace to prevail on earth in Peacemakers. Next on Peace TV.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Hadith number 354. We need someone to read it.
Aisha reported that the Quraysh had been worried about the Makhzumi woman who had committed theft and said, "Who will speak to Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam about her?" They said, "Who dare it?" But Usama, the loved one of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, So Usama spoke to him. Thereupon Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Do you intercede regarding one of the punishment prescribed by Allah?" He then stood up and addressed, saying, "O people, what the people before you was that when a man of honor stole, they let him go. But when someone who is not as honorable stole, they inflicted the prescribed punishment upon him. By Allah, if Fatima, daughter of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were to steal, I would have had her hand cut off." Another narration, she was a woman borrowing stuff and denying that she borrowed it. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered her hand cut off.
Okay, this hadith is quite clear. A woman who is honorable and from a very reputable family, Makhzumiyya, stole. And another narration, she used to deny borrowed things, meaning that she used to borrow things, and when people say, "Give it back," and she said, "I didn't take anything from you." And is this a cause for implementing prescribed punishment of cutting the hand? Scholars differed, and the most authentic opinion is that is not. Because we said that it has to be done in secret, it has to be stolen from some place that is safe, which is usually kept in, it has to become nisab, and denying things borrowed cannot fall under the same category. So why mention it? Scholars say that because this woman was both a thief and she used to deny borrowed things, meaning that whenever she took something, she denied that she ever had taken it. But not that cutting her hand was because of that. It was because she stole. So the people of Quraysh, because this was a woman from a reputable tribe, wanted to find a way, if it's possible, that her hand would not be cut off. So they discussed this among themselves, and they said no one would dare to speak to the Prophet ﷺ except his beloved Usama, the son of his beloved Zayd. So this went to Usama, and Usama, a young man in his 14 probably, or 15 of age, went to the Prophet ﷺ trying to intercede, meaning that, Prophet of Allah, this is the last time, she will not do it, please forgive her. And the Prophet ﷺ was angered by Usama's request. And he said, "Do you intercede in one of the prescribed punishment set by Allah? This is not for me or you." And then the Prophet made a khutbah ﷺ, gave a sermon, and highlighting the fact that any nation that has this kind of intercession is doomed, because this is what destroyed the previous nations. When an honorable person stole, they let him go. But if it's someone that is poor or weak, they implement the prescribed punishment. And then the Prophet ﷺ highlighted the Islamic law, stating that even if my daughter, Fatima, the beloved daughter of mine, if she were to steal, I would have chopped her hand off. This is the ruling of Allah. There are no gray areas. It's either black or white. And this is how the Islamic nation, the Islamic ummah, flourished in the beginning. Because there was no wasita. There was no, hold this for me and I hold that for you. Rub my back and I'll rub yours. No, it was straightforward. The law of Allah should be implemented, and this is what had taken place. Moving on to the hadith that follows that, which is hadith number 355. This is a movement from the prescribed punishment on stealing into the prescribed punishment for consuming intoxications. So hadith 355, who would like to read that? Okay, the brother there.
Anas bin Malik reported that a man who drank wine was brought up to the Prophet ﷺ, who flogged with palm branches 40 lashes.
Okay, and we need someone to also read hadith 356, the brother here.
Narrated Abu Barda, the Prophet ﷺ used to say, "Nobody should be flogged more than 10 lashes except in a prescribed punishment."
Okay, both hadiths, one of them is related to consuming intoxicants, drinking wine, being in a state of intoxication. The Prophet ﷺ flogged with palm branches 40 lashes. And the other one states that it is not permissible to flog more than 10 lashes unless it is in the prescribed punishment. Why do we combine between these two hadiths? A lot of scholars say that the punishment for consuming intoxicants is not prescribed, meaning that it is not something you have to implement as it is. Why? They said because the Prophet ﷺ flogged 40, Abu Bakr 40, Umar in the beginning of his time 40, but then people used to drink a lot and would not be deterred. So Umar consulted the companions and they advised him that when someone drinks, he becomes intoxicated. And hence he says things that are not correct. And he may slander someone. So what is the punishment for slandering? 80 lashes. So we suggest that you raise it up to 80. And so did Umar, may Allah be pleased with him. So scholars say that prescribed punishment means that you cannot add to it. This is what Allah prescribed. And they go on to say that at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was not 40 lashes, because some people would come and we would beat them, either by lashing them, flogging them. Some of us would use the tip of their thobe, their garments. Some of us would take their sandals. So it was not 40 lashes only by branches of palm tree. Within this, a lot of things can be used. And that is why they say it is a punishment that goes back to the ruling of the Muslim judge, whether to be 40 or more. But it should not be less than 40 at all. And most likely it should not exceed more than 80 unless he is a professional person coming on and on, he has to be deterred. Now, the second hadith, which states that nobody should be flogged more than 10 lashes except in a prescribed punishment. There are a lot of interpretation to this hadith. The most authentic is that when the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, except in a prescribed punishment, this translation is wrong. The Arabic is haddun min hududillah. And the word had can mean a prescribed punishment, which is amputating the right hand for a thief, flogging a fornicator who's not married 100 times, stoning. All of these are considered to be prescribed punishment, had. But also the word had used in the Quran refers to sin in generally. وَمَن يَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ. Whoever transgresses in something that is forbidden, that Allah made forbidden, anything, not necessarily fornication or stealing or etc. So this is the most authentic opinion and interpretation of scholars, that this hadith, we understand it as follows. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, nobody should be flogged more than 10 lashes except in the case of a sin. This means that if someone's sinful, I can exceed 10 lashes. But if someone is not sinful, I should not exceed 10 lashes. And the question is that I pose to you, when can a person be not sinful yet be flogged less than 10 lashes? Yes.
Telling a lie.
In a lie? Yes, this can be, though lying is a sin. But just to make a long story short, this is applicable when a person is reprimanding his slave, maybe reprimanding his son. This is permissible. If my son comes late, I tell him you have to be home by 9, and he comes at 1 a.m. He's not drunk. He's not doing anything bad, but he disobeyed me and he made me very worried about him. Islam permits me to flog him, but not more than 10 lashes, in the sense that I'm reprimanding him. I am trying to make him behave like a man. Likewise, if my slave, not servant, servant is a free man, I cannot flog him. If my slave also does something and disobeys me or needs to be reprimanded, Islam allows me to flog him less than 10 times, 10 lashes. By the way, the etiquette of lashing is not what people think, a whip and bang. It's a lash that does not wound, that does not shed blood. Yes, lashing is not supposed to have scars and wounds in your back. This is torture. And that is why some schools of thought say that the format of lashing is that a man puts his left hand under his arm and he does this. He does not raise his arm. He does only this. So what's moving is my wrist. So we have to know that Islam does not promote torturing or wounding people or killing them, but this is a punishment that has to be undertaken. And he is not to take off his clothes to mean that it should be on the bare flesh. He could have his t-shirt, his clothes on, but not, of course, an overall jacket and big blanket on his back. No, normal clothes would do. This is all the time we have until we meet next time. Fi amanillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.